Well, hello again from St James's Park. Now, if you see where I've come here, I've walked up to the director's box. I've got a lot of roof above me and I'm still getting absolutely soaked. I swear the rain which fell tonight, none of it has ever hit the floor. It just caught the wind and swirled around this stadium for the entire night. Yeah, working conditions in the press box weren't great, and I have to be honest, I'll always try and bring you a little bit of an insight into our trade craft. If Newcastle had scored there late on one of those two efforts which hit the bar, it would have been a nightmare for us guys in the press box there, having to do what I've explained to you before. You know, the rewrite, you've got to commit to that Dortmund victory some way out. And yeah, I must say, I thought it was deserved. You know, and on a wet, soaking night, Newcastle really, after the high of PSG, and you know, all the praise on the back of Saturday, 4-0 victory over Crystal Palace, and Kevin Keegan earlier in the week saying Newcastle can go on and win this competition. Tonight they just came back down to earth with a bump and with a splash as well, given the conditions. Now, when I say there, was it the victory was deserved for Dortmund, I put that in my match report, link below, and I've had quite a few replies saying, you know, what you're talking about, have you watched the same game as me? Well, okay, I get why supporters will say that. You know, Newcastle did have the late rally, but the late rally was to be expected. It was always going to come. I thought over the course of the game, and when the match was ultimately won and lost in the first half, I thought Newcastle, to borrow Eddie Howe's phrase, Eddie Howe has just said this to us downstairs, I thought Dortmund taught Newcastle a lesson. Alan Shearer, who was sat behind me on BBC Radio 5 Live, he said the same. You know, if Newcastle are being honest, they didn't deserve anything from the game. Yes, you know, credit for the way they came back then. They've come within the width of a crossbar from Callum Wilson's header and Anthony Gordon's deflected shot from taking a point. And I go back to the first half, where I honestly thought Dortmund were a class above Newcastle. Really, I don't necessarily think they've got better players than Newcastle, but for whatever reason, they just seem to have more know-how. They seem to have more energy about them. And if you go back to the Paris Saint-Germain game, I want to touch on the atmosphere as well. You know, that night, I said it, Newcastle supporters were the proverbial 12th man. From the off, they were up, they were at it, as were the players. I honestly thought at times tonight, I don't know why, was it the weather or a level of complacency perhaps on the pitch, or that spread to the stands, but the atmosphere wasn't really there from the off. I don't know why. It felt as if tonight those in the stands were waiting for something to happen on the pitch, and it never really got there, did it? Yes, you know, during the second half, especially the final 10-15 minutes, and James was noisy, and the roof would have gone off if they'd equalised. Of course it would have done, but there was just something about tonight from a Newcastle perspective that didn't quite feel the same as PSG or as I would have expected it to be. Now the game was won. Felix Nmecha's goal in the 45th minute there. Anthony Gordon's lost a charge and upfield. I wouldn't pin any blame at all really to Gordon. Yes, he's lost the ball, but I thought it was a good drive and run through the middle of the park, and he was unlucky. It was a terrific tackle by Nico Schlotterbeck. He has then darted up the left wing and pulled it back for Nmecha. Now, I want to talk to you about Felix Nmecha, because this has been a subject downstairs in the press room. Now, Newcastle looked at him in the summer. He was available from Wolfsburg for about £20-25 million. Instead, a couple of weeks later, they went out and spent double that on Sandro Tonali. It was a question asked of Eddie Howe. He said yes, he was a player we liked, a player we looked at, but he's a Dortmund player now. And the follow-up question, which again, you know, it's put Eddie on the spot. He said, the follow-up question by a colleague of mine was, well, you signed Tonali instead. And he said, well, you know, things are never that simple. And it's actually how I've made my way into my Daily Mail match report tonight. You know, that Newcastle did go out and spend double on Tonali, and while he is awaiting a 10-month ban for illegal betting, Nmecha's looking the real deal, sure thing, is Jude Bellingham's replacement. That's what Dortmund have brought him in for. Now, I must say there was an immediate likeness. I remember when he was linked with Newcastle, supporters looked online and were very excited about the clips they'd seen. I thought tonight he was tremendous. And again, you know, this goes back to the start of the season. I said that Newcastle had one or two issues with players who would drift from the opposition midfield and populate their number 10 position where Newcastle would ordinarily have a 6. And Nmecha did that tonight. He did it for the goal as well at the Gallagher end. You know, he was unmarked there on the fringe of the area. It's a brilliant finish. And listen, we're not going to be. I'm not being critical of Newcastle. I don't think there's any reason to sound alarm. We'll get onto injuries in just a minute, why I think there is a cause for concern. But in terms of the performance, they can have a game like that tonight. You know, it's the Champions League. They've come up against a team with more experience in this competition, and yeah, they just look to have that little bit more know-how about them. And I thought the manager, Edin Terzic, well, I think really impressive, by the way, dealt with him a couple of times now, would expect to see him in the Premier League at some point. I thought he got his game plan absolutely spot on, and it was that use of Nmecha driving, drifting from midfield that caused all sorts of problems for Newcastle. You know, I didn't think Sean Longstaff, as much as I've been touting him for England and everything else, and you know what I think of Sean, I didn't think he had a particularly good game tonight. Joe Linton was the one player on Saturday back from injury who perhaps wasn't at it as much as the others, and again there tonight I didn't think he did. You know, Bruno in the midfield, and where Newcastle were losing games at the start of the season, albeit against good opposition, I thought they were losing it in midfield. I thought that was ultimately where they lost it there again tonight, which brings us on to Tonali. And Tonali was signed for nights like this. You know, no player before tonight, no midfielder, sorry, on the continent had played more minutes in the Champions League since the start of last season. This is why Eddie Howe brought him in, to raise the bar going into a Champions League campaign. Now, what we've seen of Tonali so far, I've said, you know, there's been some good, some bad, but in the Champions League game last time here against Paris Saint-Germain, I thought up with Aston Villa, I thought it was his best game. He then comes on in the second half, and I thought he was good. I actually thought he was the one who drove Newcastle forward during that sort of that late resurgence. Now, after Saturday's game, when Tonali gets the send-off 4-0 over Palace, you come out of that, and we spoke to Longstaff on Tuesday night, and I mentioned in my preview video, we said, you know, we've got the options, we've got the depth to cope without him for what will be the next 10 months. And I have to say, you came into this game and you thought Newcastle are in such good health, they've got players coming back from injury, that the loss of Tonali wasn't huge, really, given he was a player who was still settling to the country. After tonight and the injuries, and we'll come on to them, all of a sudden the impending loss of Sandro Tonali, it brings home how big a blow it is for the football club. Their £52 million midfielder, who they did sign to be a Champions League player. The injuries, you know, it brings us onto that. Alexander Isak has gone off after 15 minutes there, and I do think that killed the crowd as well a little bit. The team and those in the stands at full felt a little bit subdued after that for too long for the remainder of the first half, and it was almost no surprise when the first half did climax with that Dortmund goal. But Isak, a couple of seconds before he went down injured with a recurrence of a groin injury, he had a chance to burst through, and he just checked himself. He did okay in the end. He rolled it to Gordon. Gordon, I thought, should have scored the shot, saved. And I just said to the guys next to me that Isak didn't, you know, if he's fully fit, he goes through on goal. I just thought he was lacking match sharpness. As it was, he went down about a minute later, and off he goes with the groin problem. Eddie said they'll have to wait and see on that. The more serious injury is Jacob Murphy in the second half, who's gone down there. Looks like he's dislocated his shoulder. I was out in Spain last week watching Scotland. Andy Robertson did something similar. He's been operated on. He's out for 3 months. So fingers crossed it's not that, but it looks like Murphy could be missing for a substantial period. And Elliot Anderson too, you know, wasn't in the matchday squad tonight, and Eddie's just told us downstairs looks like a few weeks out for him with a back problem. So all of a sudden there you've lost a midfielder, a striker and a winger, you know, 3 key positions, and it brings it back to how potentially short Newcastle could be in that central striking position, because don't forget Callum Wilson is just coming back from a period of injury. So the news on Isak is going to be huge for Newcastle, really. Now, where does this leave Newcastle in terms of the chances of progressing from the group? Well, they've gone from the summit and they find themselves now in the back of this defeat down in the Europa League slot in third. And all of a sudden, with away games at Dortmund and Paris to come, and I still do think they're going to emerge from this group. You know, I'm not going to deviate from that now, but that loss there tonight, that was so big. And the reason I say that is they're left on 4 points, and you're probably going to need 9 to go through. And if you're looking at that and you're saying the banker is Milan back here in the final game on December the 13th, that would, added to the 4 they've got now, would be 7. So they're either going to have to go and get a couple of draws and remain unbeaten at Dortmund and Paris Saint-Germain, or go away and beat one of those. Well, on the evidence of tonight against Dortmund, with the injuries, I think it's going to be hard to go there and win, especially, you know, the 1 away game so far against Milan. Newcastle didn't play well. I don't think they did. So, and then you go to PSG, and maybe that's the one they've got to look at it as winning. It's certainly within them. Of course it is. You know, I've made so much of how good Newcastle are, and how I believe they can go really deep in this competition, the Champions League. But all of a sudden, after tonight, it's just Eddie used the phrase, you know, the lesson, the reality check, and perhaps it is for us guys as journalists as well. So yeah, now after that it feels a little flat coming onto my Daily Mail merit stars, but I'll do them nonetheless, and yeah, put them on screen now. 3 stars, I think, Nick Pope, and that almost tells a story in itself. You know, there was a sea of yellow shirts sort of swarming into the box early on there. It was a crazy start. I thought it was a really entertaining start. The first 20-25 minutes were tremendous, but I thought, you know, after that Dortmund took control and they probably had the better of the chances then. Pope's double save to keep the game goalless at 0-0 I thought was very good, and there were 1 or 2 others after that which just maintained that hope for Newcastle. He actually nearly got his head on the corner there at the very end there, from which Newcastle ultimately hit the bar. So yeah, Pope gets the 3 stars. 2 stars to Anthony Gordon. Some might look and say he lost the ball for the goal. Well, as I've already touched on, I wouldn't blame him for that. I thought he was the one who had a real go. I thought he showed in endeavour. He had a couple of good chances to score, probably should have done better, but nonetheless, you know, he was in there, he was trying to make things happen on what was a night when Newcastle didn't really click with their usual patterns in the final third. And the 1 star goes to Miguel Almiron for the same reason, really. You know, it didn't really come off to him. Like I say, it's a 1 star that isn't necessarily shining brightly, but I thought he had a go, Almiron. Like I say, this is the Champions League. It's there's been good, bad, there's been a win, a loss, a draw for Newcastle so far, and this is the learning curve they're on. I've just got the feeling, you know, that it's probably very likely now that it's going to come right down to the wire the next time we're back here in this competition against AC Milan on December the 13th. So yeah, guys, I hope you've enjoyed my reflections. Like I say, I always try to be honest, and I thought the game had the right winner there tonight. Thank you again for watching. I'm away home to dry out now. I won't be down at Wolves on Saturday. I'm off to Barcelona tomorrow, luckily enough, with my 3 little boys, just for a little bit of a break during the half term. I might even bring you a video from over there. We'll see. Yeah, guys, again, thanks for watching. I'll leave a community tab where we'll have a little bit more discussion on this game. Please click on the links below the line and belatedly like and subscribe as well. One last little scan of St James's. Okay, guys, good night. Bye bye.